You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show, live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network and X Zone Broadcast Network. Visit our website at www.xzoneradiotv.com.
If I had $1 million.
The X Zone radio and TV show is largely an opinion talk show. All opinions, comments, or statements of fact expressed by Rob McConnell's guests are strictly their own and are not to be construed as those of the X Zone radio and TV show or in any manner endorsed by Rob McConnell, Relmar McConnell Media Company, Talkstar Radio Network, its affiliated stations, or employees.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
You doing that thing you do, breaking my heart into a million pieces, like you always do. And you don't mean to be cruel, you never even knew about the heartache I've been going through. Well, I try to forget you, girl, but it's just so hard to do. Every time you do that thing you do,
And welcome to the X Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell. It is Wednesday, April the 28th in the year 2010. For the next 4 hours, I'm going to be your host and your guide as together we cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And the X Zone comes to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until 2 a.m. Eastern. And then the show is repeated in its entirety from 2 a.m. until 6 a.m. From 6 p.m. from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. right here on the Talkstar Radio Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, and on Star Cable. If you'd like to give us a call, our toll-free worldwide number is 1-800-610-7035. Email address xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our websites, www.xzoneradiotv.com. That's our main website. The X Zone store is up and running, thanks to my good friend John Reynolds at SCFX 3D. And if you'd like to find out more about John, there's a very simple way, X Zone Nation. Go to paragators.org, click on the link for SCFX 3D. It'll bring you right to John's site. It's easy. Plus, while you're there, check out to see what's happening in the world of paragators. My first guest tonight is a return guest. We had the pleasure of having him on the show last week. We didn't even touch the topics that I wanted to touch, so I asked Joseph FRAY if he'd like to come back and join us again this week, and he graciously accepted. We're going to be talking about an achievable solution of our energy problems, and Joseph FRAY is a chartered electrical engineer and physicist in the United Kingdom. After graduation, he entered the electrical power industry. During this period, he served as a part-time lecturer at the Blackpool Technical College. From the power industry, he joined the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority, which is also known under the acronym UKAEA, as the works electrical engineer at the Chapel Cross Nuclear Power Station. Now, during this assignment, he developed an interest in the reactor side of the operation and began a study of the reactor physics. He then moved to the International Power Branch of the UKAEA and was engaged in the review of commercial nuclear power plants. While in this position, he participated in the startup testing of the Advanced Gas-Cooled Reactor at the, wide-scale site. He also gave lectures on reactor control at the Calder Hall Reactor Operations School. Joining me now is Joseph FRAY. And Joseph, welcome back to the X Zone.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
You know, Joseph, I thought of our conversation several times after the news of the oil rig in the Gulf of Mexico and the chaos it is causing. Like, wouldn't this be a perfect time for people to better understand how safe nuclear power actually is, and that it could avoid these kind of environmental disasters?
Well, indeed it would, and it also brings us to the topic which we didn't get round to last time. That is the extensive use of gasoline, which obviously is, requires a demand for oil, in order to produce the gasoline. That's the second part of the thing that we need to look at. You see, we have two basic problems with energy, as I see it. The first of these is the devastating effect of using coal for most of our electricity production. And the second problem is the use of gasoline so extensively, which requires, at least in the US, about 60% of it to be imported, which is a drain on the economy and also adds to the pollution.
All right, stand by, Joseph. You and I have to take our first commercial break. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Exxon Nation, Joseph FRAY is our special guest. He's the author of An Achievable Solution of Our Energy Problems. His website is bbotw.com. Don't go away. Back in 2.
Now, I think I know why it sounded so strange on the telephone. Well, it's hard when you discover what keeps you going, keeps you all alone. I dream so real, you thought the smoke might never clear, and you hide it all behind endless cigarettes and tears. Somebody waits for the time I know it never.
Joseph FRAY is my special guest. He's the author of An Achievable Solution of Our Energy Problems. His website is www.bbotw.com. Joseph, how feasible is it for us to simply change and get rid of our thirst for gasoline and coal, fossil fuels?
Well, we're jumping ahead of what I was about to do, but we can go right into that.
No. Let's start off where you finished. I'm sorry about that.
No, I was just about to say that in order to bring everybody up to speed, I was going to quickly recap on this problem of the coal and then get into the gasoline,
All right.
But either way, we can, whichever you prefer,
Well, let's do the recap first.
Okay. Well, basically, the problem with coal is that we produce over, at least in the US, over 50% of our power, and in Canada about 16%, is produced just by burning coal. Now, a typical coal-fired power station will burn 4 million tons of coal in a year. And when you consider in the US we have about 500 or 600 of these, you can see there's an awful lot of coal being burned.
It certainly is.
Now that involves mining it, transporting it, and finally burning it. It's the burning that's the main problem. I mean, in doing so, it produces lots of gases of the type of the nitrogen oxides and sulfur oxides, which go into the atmosphere, mix with the moisture there, and produce dilute nitric and sulfuric acids, which come down as acid rain. They do an awful lot of damage around the plant. But more importantly, they affect people's health. In this way, the medical costs and so on associated with this, particularly for older people and the younger people and people with bronchial troubles like asthma, they suffer tremendously from this. I mean, to give you some example, in the state of Indiana, the Harvard School of Public Health did a survey, and for 1 year they estimated that there were over 800 premature deaths, 21,000 asthma attacks, of which 1,200 of these required emergency room visits. This is just in the state of Indiana alone. In Ontario, the Ontario Medical Association estimated $10 billion involved in a year for medical costs, lost work time, and other damage that was done. And they estimated 2,000 premature deaths. That was for Ontario. So you can see for the whole country what a devastating effect this has. And secondly, there's another problem. In burning all this coal, a lot of ash is produced. A typical coal plant can produce about 1,000 tons of ash a day. And somehow we have to get rid of all of this. Most of it is put in disused quarries and landfills, and about 20% of it is put in ponds adjacent to the power station. And these are rather dangerous because they're not lined, and the stuff that's contained in these ponds, the ash that's dumped into the water in the ponds, contains such things as arsenic and mercury, and also things like uranium and thorium. In very small quantities, but when you consider the rate at which this is being produced, 1,000 tons a day of this ash, these small quantities become significant. In fact, it's estimated that a typical coal-fired plant in 1 year will produce 5 tons of uranium, which is deposited out into the environment, plus about twice as much thorium. Now, this obviously creates problems. These ponds, for instance, are very dangerous because they can easily fail. In fact, we had a case in the Kingston plant, Tennessee Valley Authority plant in Tennessee. One of these dikes containing the water and sludge broke and deposited about 1 billion gallons of this sludge over 300 acres. Several houses were destroyed, and the cleanup costs approached $1 billion, and has taken 2 years. Now, there are many of these sites identified all over the country. So, as you can see, coal presents a pretty severe problem to the environment.
It certainly does.
So we have to look at what's the solution. Clearly, we need to replace the coal-fired plants. That's the only way we can get around this one. And in order to replace them, we've got to look at what the alternatives are. And I think we in looking at the alternatives, we find that the only really one that's viable is nuclear, because of the amount that's required. For instance, in the US, we need over 1 million megawatts of power, well over 1 million. And now, we could nowhere near supply this kind of power from solar, for instance, or wind. The principal reasons being that when there's no sun, there's no power, and when there's no wind, there's no power. And this has been demonstrated around the world with various places. For instance, in Denmark, they have 20% of their power comes from wind. The only way they can get away with that is they're connected to the European power grid, so that when their wind fails, they can get the power from there. We wouldn't have much chance doing that in the US, for instance. I mean, we don't have an alternative power grid to get to latch onto. We've only got our own. And in Texas, in February 2008, 1,200 megawatts of wind power were lost. And the only way they could keep the system going was by asking major customers to switch off the power altogether. Well, I mean, you can't run an industry or a country in this manner, you know, it's just not possible. So we find that coal that solar and wind just cannot replace the coal plants. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't be used. I mean, solar, for example, is quite useful where it's with these panels on the rooftops of houses and buildings, because when you're using that power, you're not using coal anyway, so it's a help. But you've got to consider that the replacement of the coal plants could never happen with solar or wind. That's the main thing to consider. The only thing we're left with is nuclear. Now, nuclear doesn't require any backup at all. It can supply all the power you need, and does so in a perfectly clean manner. It has no emissions whatsoever, and no radiation. That's another point we should come to, because as I said earlier, these coal-fired plants produce this uranium which they deposit in these landfills and in these ponds, and this uranium gets converted, some of it, to plutonium even by cosmic radiation. The thing is, there's a build-up of radiation around these plants, And it's far higher. It's about 100 times more radiation built up around a coal-fired plant than there is anywhere near a nuclear plant for the same amount of power being produced.
Now, you said that's because you said last time when you were on that's because there's no regulations pertaining to radioactive substance at a coal power plant.
No, this ash is just deposited anywhere, and there's really little regulation about it, you see. People just don't appreciate what's happening to it. In fact, the estimates are that if we continued at the present rate, by the year 2040, there will be 145,000 tons of uranium will have been deposited in these various landfills and places from the whole of the coal-fired power plants. So, I mean, it's something that's going on. While at the moment it isn't a serious proposition, you can see that this radiation could become so. Mm-hmm. But the reason to mention it is it's this attitude that people have that radiation is associated with a nuclear power plant, and that's nonsense. It isn't. It should not be so, you see. In fact, one might be interested in to know what happens with nuclear power radiation. First of all, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has established strict limits, for radioactive emissions from nuclear power plants. All airborne and liquid discharges from nuclear power plants must be monitored and filed annually with the NRC. These reports are publicly available, and the quantity, type, and radiation dose are noted. Plant operators regularly sample surrounding soil, vegetation, cow's milk and water with the results submitted to the NRC. All these reports are publicly available. The detection of environmental radiation is due mainly from past nuclear weapons testing and Chernobyl, which was the disaster that we'll talk about. So you see that while radiation still isn't serious from the coal plants, it is hundreds of times more radiation than there's from any nuclear plant. The nuclear plant's being monitored in the way I've just described, whereas nothing for the coal plants. So that's one of our major concerns here.
All right, now, when we look at the comparisons between the fossil fuel and what has happened off the coast of Texas and in the Gulf of Mexico, we look at the mining accident that happened just a couple of weeks ago. We look at the pollution that is being spewed up by using fossil fuels and coal. Why hasn't the light gone on and major companies, corporations, as well as federal legislators said, hey, listen, guys, coal is out, fossil fuel is out, nuclear is in?
It's gradually working round to that, I believe. I mean, they've just sanctioned, new plants to be built in Georgia, a couple of new nuclear plants. These will be the first for about 30 years that they've built. And this has largely been due to the ridiculous propaganda and hysteria spread around by the anti-nuclear people, which I'd like to say something about. I mean, they've completely misled the public. And again, I must say, the nuclear people themselves haven't done enough to counteract this, in my opinion. But certainly it is this propaganda that... All
right, you and I have to take a commercial break. When we come back, let's talk about the propaganda involved in clean energy versus dirty energy. And by dirty energy, all I have to say, Exo Nation, is... just take a look at this, at the smut that is being shot up into our atmosphere. People talk about global warming, people talk about the environment, but when push comes to shove, very few want to do anything. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break as we continue from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Joseph FRAY is our special guest, www.bbotw.com. My name's Rob McConnell. This is the X-Zone, and you're listening to us on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, and Star Cable. Don't go away.
No, it never comes. You get yourself so high, and you come down feeling blue.
Hi, this is Ken Elliott. When I'm floating around the universe, I always try to tune in to Rob McConnell.
Hi ho there, Timothy Frog on Sesame Street. When I want to find out what's going on with UFOs or ghosts, I listen to the X-Zone with Rob McConnell.
This is Les Corrigan from Target Internet Development. You're listening to Rob McConnell on the X-Zone Radio Show.
This is John Hogue, Prophecy Scholar, and you're listening to Rob McConnell in the X-Zone.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Joseph FRAY is my special guest. He is the author of An Achievable Solution of Our Energy Problems. His website is www.bbotw.com. First of all, Joseph, great having you back with us here in the X Zone. Before we went to the break, we were just getting into the lobbying and the marketing or lack of marketing when it comes to bringing in cleaner fuel. And by all the evidence that I've read, both from government sources as well as independent sources, the way to go is nuclear.
Yes, the big problem, as I say, that's impeded the development of nuclear power has been this ridiculous propaganda that's been put out. People telling half-truths, not presenting the facts to people. I mean, for instance, you'll find the anti-nuclear people will say, look, it's very dangerous, nuclear power. Look what happened at Chernobyl, for instance, which was a major disaster. What they don't tell you is that, first of all, the Chernobyl reactor was a design which would never be accepted in this country. It was an unstable design, a cheap and nasty design, which would never get a permit to be built in this country, let alone operated. They don't tell you that. And also, they don't tell you that the people who were operating that reactor were doing so in a ridiculous manner, totally reckless manner. It was known that they should not operate in a low power level with it, a particularly low power level. The designers said this. Nonetheless, these people operating it to conduct an experiment continued for hours, right up to the time of the accident, operating in this dangerous zone. They even disconnected various parts of the safety equipment because they thought they might interfere with their experiment. And they ignored warnings from the plant process computer telling them that they were in a dangerous situation. I mean, you can't believe the things that they were doing. So finally, they did get the disaster. The thing shot up to about 100 times full power in less than a minute.
So Chernobyl was caused by human error.
A lot of it was human error, but first of all, this is the point. Human error are ridiculous, totally reckless behavior on a reactor design which would never be built in this country. So what right have the anti-nuclear people, to use that as an example for not having nuclear power? You see, that's the point to be made. A totally misrepresentation of the situation.
But
They'll then tell you...
But all in all, how safe is nuclear power?
Well, I mean, frankly, for the last 30 years, we've been operating over 100 nuclear plants in the U.S., and they've been operating plants in Canada, and there's no instance on record of nuclear power having affected anybody, done any harm to any member of the public. Now, just compare that with what the coal plants have been doing. I mean, it's just unbelievable. You see, nuclear plants have got a safety record which is second to none. You consider any other industry that there is, whether it's coal mining, whether it's flying on aeroplanes, driving on motor cars, any industrial enterprise you can come up with. They've got so many deaths per year or something like that, that you can look up. You'll find there are none for nuclear power. I mean, this is the difference, and yet people have this ridiculous image, in their minds due to this propaganda. It's just unbelievable.
And what about fossil fuel? Why do we still use fossil fuel? For example, gasoline. Isn't there some way that we can actually get rid of the the automobile engines that we have, and use some other sort of energy so that we could kick the entire gasoline habit once and for all?
Well, I believe so. The people come up with different. We're jumping ahead now, but anyway, let's go into that one. First of all, gasoline, the replacements for that, the possibilities have been suggested. I mean, obviously, we've got to replace it if we're going to do any good. Mm-hmm. And one thing has been suggested is hydrogen as a method. You can either use this directly or use it with a fuel cell. Now, in the fuel cell, you put in the hydrogen, it's mixed with oxygen, and you produce electricity and water. Well, that's fine from an environmental point of view, no problem at all. The only trouble is hydrogen doesn't exist naturally. You've got to manufacture it. So there's a cost of manufacturing it, first of all, which is either electrolysis or from natural gas, steam reduction or some method like that, all of which costs money. Secondly, how much can you store of this on a vehicle? It's not easy to store a lot of hydrogen. You have to liquefy it or something like that in order to be able to carry enough to get you anywhere on the vehicle, you see. That's the next thing. And also, of course, there's a danger here. A small amount of hydrogen in oxygen produces a very explosive situation. So that motor car accidents might lead to explosions with this. That's something to be considered. So hydrogen doesn't seem to be such a good alternative. Then people will come up with ethanol. Now, that sounds, just as a replacement for gasoline. The only trouble is ethanol has its problems. I mean, first of all, to produce it, you need a large demand for land and water resources just to produce it. When you consider if you're producing it on the scale as to replace the oil that we use at the moment, if it's made from corn, this could lead to a food scarcity and push up the price of food quite a lot if we start using tremendous amounts of land just to produce ethanol. You get pollution from the manufacture of it. It produces these nitrogen oxides again. And then, of course, a lot of fertilizers and pesticides are needed to produce the ethanol. These have got to be disposed of. These are carried away in water into the rivers and places and produce a lot of devastation there. In the Gulf of Mexico, for instance, there's a large dead area where the Mississippi empties into the Gulf of Mexico. This is due to pesticides and fertilizers and things which are dumped into the Gulf. There's a large area in the Gulf where there's little or no aquatic life due to this. Now, if we multiplied this on the scale that we need to produce ethanol to replace the gasoline, this would be a tremendous problem. When it's burned in the vehicles, it still produces pollution and has corrosive effects, gums up filters and various things. And again, some people will argue and come up with a good explanation that it takes more energy to produce a gallon of ethanol than you get out of the gallon of ethanol itself. So altogether, ethanol is not really a bright prospect, although people have been pushing this, to do it. To me, the only replacement is electrification. We must have electric cars. That's the only way to go. Now, what can we do with electric vehicles? You see, at the moment, the development of electric vehicles is such that they can compete with gasoline vehicles in every way possible, except one, and that is the distance that they can travel with the presently available batteries. Mm-hmm. That's the one problem that we have. And we're talking about all electric or plug-in hybrids. Those are the ones that we need to be using, because we don't want to be burning gasoline to produce electricity in a hybrid. That's not a good thing to do. So it's the plug-in hybrids that we need to use, where you charge the batteries on them from plugging into the power supply, not by burning gasoline. So it's a plug-in hybrids and all electric are the things that we should be using. Now, the present ranges are anywhere from 100 to 200 miles with the battery vehicles. Now, for 200 miles, you need the most expensive lithium-ion batteries, which is the best we can get so far. And this is the problem. This is why we need to develop better batteries to me, the government should be developing something almost like a mini Manhattan project, if you like,
Right.
to work on the development of batteries, because this really would be the answer to the gasoline question.
I've often wondered if the progress in the development of alternative fuel has not been suppressed by major corporations who are making a killing and extraordinary amounts of corporate profits by the sale of fossil fuels.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I mean, you see, to me, the way to go is undoubtedly if you produce all your power from nuclear power, and you had all your cars running on electric drive, all the problems would virtually disappear. You'd remove all the major health hazards and medical costs. You'd remove foreign oil dependency with all its political and economic issues. You'd remove all the property damage. US would no longer be regarded as a major world polluter. And of course global warming would no longer be relevant anyway, because the nuclear plants don't produce any CO2. So I mean, that would clearly be the sort of an energy utopia if you could get the electric drive completely. Now, there are things we could do at the moment towards electric drive. For instance, in urban use, we could use at the moment, if we developed a charging infrastructure, we could use for urban travel. Almost all of it could be done with electric cars. See, the more people use them, the less expensive they're going to become. It's like everything else. Cost comes with the how many you produce of a particular thing. Now, we could even conduct schemes for urban use where we replace batteries. You didn't have to wait for them to be charged, for example. I mean, if a scheme could be established whereby you go into a filling station like you would for gas and you just have your battery changed. And if there was a scheme set up like this, and I don't see why it couldn't be, this would get over the problem of charging and the time spent charging. Because the better batteries at the moment, the most expensive ones, they can be recharged in about 10 minutes or less. But these are very expensive and they're not getting used very much. So this is why we need battery development. The real answer is to develop these batteries. To solve the gasoline problem. There's no question it will happen eventually. We shall definitely go to electric eventually. It's just a matter of how quick we go about doing it.
But will it be too late by the time we make the decision to make the switch?
Well, it could be. As I say, they're gradually swinging over. I mean, more electric cars are coming on the market, and we should give incentives, all the incentives possible, like letting them drive in the on the road where the normal cars are not allowed to go on these lanes. These lanes which are reserved. They could let the electric cars go on all these lanes. They could give them preferential parking facilities. These are just incentives that they could give to get people to buy more electric cars. And as soon as people start buying more, well, then the price will come down, you see.
Well, I think they're doing it backwards. I think that the government, since the government likes giving money to losing propositions, should give money to the auto industry and, say, listen, make the cars cheaper so that more people can buy them. Here's some money for R&D on the batteries, and let's get this into full swing. But I don't think that's going. I don't think that's going to happen because I believe that too many people have deep pockets, and the fossil fuel industry not only is fueling the war machine, but it's also fueling in industry, and people don't want to make the change because if you change too much, you're going to look at an increase in unemployment. Sure, people really don't. I don't believe people really want the environmental problems solved, because as long as these problems exist, major industries are showing a profit. As long as the major industries show a profit, people are being employed, and as long as people are being employed, you've got the need for the fossil fuel, which fuels the war machine.
Oh, it's a vicious circle.
It is.
There's no question, but it can be changed. You see I think people are gradually coming round to it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these people have been opposing nuclear power. For instance, one of the leaders, Patrick Moore, who used to be in Greenpeace,
Yes.
he's now come round they were against nuclear power altogether. Now he's come around to saying, well, no, nuclear power is probably the best way to go from an environmental point of view. So gradually the climate is changing, I think. You see, but it takes a lot to overcome this what shall I say, bad publicity that's been given to nuclear power. For instance, I mean, there's silly misconceptions that people have about nuclear power.
All right,
I mean,
why don't we hold these silly misconceptions until we come back from this commercial break that we have to take right now? We'll be back in about 4 minutes from now. Our special guest this hour is Joseph FRAY. His website is www.bbotw.com. That's www.bbotw.com. This is the X-Zone on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, and on Star Cable. Our toll-free worldwide number is 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com and our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. Check out the X-Zone store, xzonestore.com. We'll be back. Don't go away. So tell me, Joseph, what are some of the popular misconceptions about nuclear power?
Well, I mean, a simple one, first of all. I think there are a lot of people out there who think that a nuclear power reactor is just a nuclear bomb being controlled, in a slow manner, so it's not doing any harm. And it might, if things go wrong, go off as a nuclear bomb. I mean, this is just nonsense. Because, I mean, first of all, the enrichment that's used for the fuel in a nuclear power reactor is never more than about 3 or 4%. You need at least 80 to 90% to be able to create a bomb, you see. So if you just went away and left the nuclear power plant by itself, it could never go off as a bomb, no way. But this is a popular misconception with people. Another one, as we've already talked about, is the radiation. I mean, the radiation is monitored, as I explained earlier, for the nuclear power, and a coal-fired power plant produces 100 times as much radiation for the same amount of power produced. Then there's the cost. People argue, oh, they're too expensive. Well, you add all the damage done by the coal-fired plants to the cost of producing energy that way, and see which is the cheapest. But apart from that, the cost is artificially pushed up with nuclear power, because these interveners and people arguing over it have caused a delay in building them. As an example, in Japan, where they might, for instance, be worried about nuclear for some reason, as you might expect, Hiroshima and so forth, they can build a nuclear power plant in about 4 years. It takes us 10 to 14 years in this country, in the US, to build the same plant by the same company, just due to all arguing and wrangling that goes on with intervening, you see, which is sheer nonsense. Does nothing to alter the plant at all except delay it. And when you delay it, you push up the capital costs tremendously, you see. So these are the kind of misconceptions that people have about nuclear. 3 Mile Island, they thought, well, look, we had a big accident there. In 3 Mile Island, the several commissions were set up to investigate this immediately after the event. And all of them came up with one conclusion. There was no radiation whatsoever ever got to the public. None whatsoever from 3 Mile Island. And that is because of the way we design and operate reactors. They can tolerate accidents on our reactors and nothing would happen.
So if there was no radioactive leak at 3 Mile Island, why was there such a big panic, and why do people resent nuclear power so much? Because one of the major reasons they use for not going with nuclear power is 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl.
Exactly. Well, as I say, I mean, because they're not given the facts. I mean, the facts of Chernobyl, it's ridiculous to even talk about Chernobyl in the same breath as a reactor in this country. And 3 Mile Island produced no devastation whatsoever. No member of the public was affected by radiation or anything else with 3 Mile Island.
Joseph, we've run out of time for tonight. I want to thank you so much for joining us. Always a great pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to the next time you're on with us. We're going to be talking about UFOs.
Well, it could be.
All right, Joseph, take care of yourself. Exo Nation, Joseph FRAY, he's the author of An Achievable Solution of Our Energy Problems. His website, www.bbotw.com. That's www.bbotw.com. When I come back, Paul Shishish and I talk about UFOs, fact, fiction, or psychosis. I'll be back on the other side of this break at 6.5 minutes past the hour. Don't go away.